What's up YouTube? Capital G here. Today going to show you guys Ruben Jimenez's top 16 chain burn from YCS Long Beach. Pretty interesting deck. It definitely looks like it meant to attack the Dino Rabbit as its main matchup that it was concerned with. First, let me go over the deck list. He played 3 copies of Lava Golem, 1 copy of Morphing Jar, 1 Marshmallow, 1 Swift Scarecrow, 3 copies of One Day Apiece. I'm pretty sure that was very important. 3 copies of Pot of Duality, 2 Train Strikes, and 1 Scapegoat. Very minimal spell lineup as with most burn decks. 3 copies of Accumulated Fortune, 3 copies of Reckless Greed, 3 copies of Legacy of Yatagarasu, 3 copies of Justice Urts, 3 copies of Secret Barrel, win conditions, 2 copies of Dimensional Wall, and I think it's just Dimension Wall actually. Dimension Wall, and 2 copies of Magic Cylinder, 2 copies of Threatening Roar, 2 copies of Ojama Trio, 1 Metal Reflect Slime, 1 Ceasefire, I freaking love that card, and 1 Jar of Greed. Okay, first to start off, Lava Golem. We all know that as a card that takes care of Lagia and Doka, which both of those cards can be problems. Doka not so much for this deck. I mean, he only runs 3 effects that would activate. So, I mean, what's Doka really going to hit in this deck? But Lagia can be a pain in the ass. So, Lava Golem is definitely good here. And if you can get it to attack into a D-Wall or a Cylinder, you should win. One card that I think that has been pivotal to burn and stall as of late. You saw this from Kevin Petrola when he topped Atlanta, or when he was on my channel when he topped regionals, One Day Apiece. It has just given burn and stall decks so much more consistency. I think this card might eventually end up getting limited, but it's very good. It gives them more. It just gives them an extra turn to set up. You know, yes, you give your opponent a card, but the decks that run this card don't really care about advantage at all. I thought Scapegoat was really solid in here. I mean, anything that can slow the game down to his pace is definitely good. You can just, you know, sit on them. If they give you 2 turns, then that's fantastic. One thing in here that you really have to take note of is that he ran 3 copies of Legacy of Yada. Okay, so since Piper Chaos saw a lot of play at the YCS, or since it did very well, I should say, you know, a lot of people forget that if your opponent has a spirit monster on the field and you activate Yada, you don't draw 1, you draw 2. So Piper Chaos, they run, you know, they run Kinka Boyo. So, you know, you'll end up going +1 and drawing more cards. So why not run more copies of this than Jar of Greed? It just kind of makes sense right now. Now, I am kind of surprised that he got away with the 2 Magic Cylinder, 2 D-Walls. I've seen some burn decks that are just running all chainables. But, you know, if you can get Lagia to waste that negate fairly early, or you can catch him with a Lava Golem, you can do, you know, you can get these off. My concern with this would be in sectors, but, you know, you can't not play cards because you fear one deck. I mean, Cylinder and D-Wall are going to be amazing against everything but in sectors. So, you know, I think that does actually, you know, end up making sense. Another huge tech card for him looks like it was Metal Reflect Slime. At first, I looked at this and I was like, this is awful. Until I really thought about this and I thought, well, Doka and Lagia can't get over this. Forbidden Lance doesn't do anything to it. You know what I mean? Even if they Fiendish Chain it, since it's a monster, it still keeps its stats. That doesn't do anything either. You know what I mean? Like almost every deck, Heroes and Dark World, I mean, unless they pop a Grapha, they're going to have a huge problem if you just sit on this card for a few turns like Scapegoat, just to set up your pieces, your combos, you know? Cards like Marshmallow and Metal Reflect Slime and Scapegoat, they just give you more time so that you can get to your key burn cards and win. He's side decked. Obviously, he was looking at Decree being one of the biggest problem cards. One thing that you have to remember about this deck is with emergency provisions, let's say your opponent attacks into a Magic Cylinder and your opponent chains Royal Decree, right? And let's say you do a bunch of chains and then they chain Decree at the end. If you activate emergency provisions will activate first. It will send all your traps to the graveyard and they will activate. Decree only negates effects that are on the field, so it's kind of like skill drain. If when the chain resolves, your cards aren't on the field, then you get those effects. So that's something to remember. He's side decked a Nico King, which is a pretty cool tech card because it works really well against Dark Worlds. Like, let's say they activate Dark World Dealings, you pitch Nico Main King, and then their turn has to end. Same thing with windups. I wouldn't consider it as good, but if they happen to pop that out of your hand, then obviously you can just end their turn, and then they're just kind of sitting there like, wow, what happened? So the rest of his extra deck seems a little bit scattered. Playing a Spirit Reaper instead of a second copy of Marshmallow kind of makes me wonder. This deck looks all in all pretty decent. My only problem is it looks like he might have some problem with the Insector matchup. He's siding 2 copies of Shadow Mirror. He said that was for Dark World, but I would probably side 3 because Insector, it could be a serious nightmare for this deck because all of these non-chainable cards, these Metal Reflect Slimes, these D-Walls, and Cylinders they're not going to do much against a deck like that. And, Lava Golem could end up biting you in the ass because if you put Lava Golem on them and they're able to pop your back row, I mean, they could just push for a game with Lava Golem and a Centipede or something like that. So I think Burn is kind of a disgusting deck when you play against it. But you know what? He topped, and good job. Let me know what you guys think. Click an ad as always, and I'll see you next time.